Hello and welcome to tonight's Get in Tune. I'm Michael Gracia and I have a fun show tonight. I got a couple of returning guests. I had a great time chatting with them when they were on. It was about maybe a month ago now. Um, they are, let me grab my book here. They're the publishers of this book, Zorro's Exploits, which I got to work in, and many others, except this is the only one I got on hand to show right now. Bold Venture Press, publisher and editor are here, Rich Harvey and Audrey Parenti. So let's bring them on. They're going to talk tonight about Pulp Adventurecon happening this weekend. Hello.
How are you, Michael?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Just fine.
I'm glad you can come on. I'm sure Audrey will be on in a few moments. Not right now. Hello.
I gotta find a way to squeeze in so you can see us.
I changed the view. I forgot. How you doing, Audrey?
Okay. Life is busy.
I can imagine you have a show coming up on Saturday.
We do.
Doing the show, I've put on shows myself. I know how tiring and how stressful all that can be.
You have no idea.
And we're getting a little stressed.
There's so much stuff going on in our lives right now.
Yeah.
Just short explanation. I have a son visiting here from Thailand that I haven't seen in 4 years?
Yeah.
Wow.
And I suggested maybe I could do this solo because she might want to spend some time with him before he goes back to Thailand.
Yeah, I did. But they're leaving. We're leaving for New Jersey tomorrow, and they're leaving Friday for Thailand. So I spent all day over there, and basically I'm a little rushed.
I understand. But that's great that you got to see your son. So
yeah, it is. It's awesome. Yeah. And they both got the arts gene musically and otherwise. So
that's great. Yeah, off the air, Rich and I were talking about our I guess lack of sports gene. I never really had one, and so, but I'm always happy to hear about people in the arts. I don't care what they do. As an art educator, my goal was to promote art. And even though I focused on cartooning and other types of illustration, animation art, I didn't care what people did. I used to tell people, go home, color, knit, whatever it was that was creative. As long as you had a creative outlet, I thought that was fantastic. So music's awesome. I have a nephew who's unbelievable when it comes to music. So let's just go to the comments real quick. So Dylan says hello to Rich and Audrey. And Facebook user, which I don't know why it still comes up, it is Joe Ryan, says, "Hey, tuning in, looking forward to this." So thanks, Joe. I'm glad you are. Hello to Dylan as well. So tonight I want to talk about Pulp Adventurecon. You mentioned, and Ray Felix says, "Great show, thank you." You mentioned.
Is he referring to Pulp Adventurecon or your show?
I'm hoping both.
Okay.
We'll see. No. I mean, listen, Ray is a very talented creator. He's the creator and owner of Bronx Heroes Comic Con, the whole thing. He has a bunch of characters and stuff. I think. I believe he even tried to get into the show, but is on the waiting list, and I think it's a little too late now. But next year, for sure, his stuff is he has a lot of pulp-like characters.
Okay, the name is familiar. I think he is on a wait list.
Yeah. He mentioned he's a good buddy of mine.
Throw your stuff in the car anyway, because you never know what'll happen on Saturdays. Someone might not make it.
Well, Ray, you heard them. Come to the show. If you want, I'll give you part of my table. I'll take up the whole thing. I'll give you a little, like 6 inches or something. You can set up one book. Set up one book, man.
That's what it's going to come down to this year. People are just we're really inundated. Next year, we might have to find a bigger boat.
We had a location where I had the show for about 20 years, and then there was a change in management, and then they were saying, oh, you'll have to rent your own tables from now on. And I thought, wait a minute, that's like doubling the cost of the room if they wouldn't let us use any of their tables. So we had one location in 2020, the COVID year, and then we found this location in Bordentown, New Jersey, right near the original one, but it's a little bit tight. That's the problem. There hasn't been much room to expand. We have to find a hotel that's got enough room and doesn't want to charge a fortune and has the tables.
Yeah.
And let us host an event like this without promising catering.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of hotels won't. You have to pay for the catering even if you don't use it. So,
There's one location a couple miles north of Bordentown that will be wonderful, and the cost of the room isn't bad, but they told us, but you'd have to buy a catering package even if you're not going to use it. So in effect, the room is 2 or 3 times more expensive than we really want.
Yeah. I ran into that when I was looking for locations in certain areas as well. You go to the bigger anytime you go to a bigger hotel, you have that issue. At least that I've run into. It's one of the reasons I don't put shows on anymore. I got tired of that type of stuff. Also, I as an artist, I just prefer to make the art and show up at shows and sell rather than organize.
All those troubles aside, though, we have a packed house. Some wonderful tables of all kinds of stuff. And we can go through the vendors and the guests if you like.
I would love to hear about that. But before we do that, just so people are aware, tell us, what is Pulp Adventurecon? I know you mentioned the last time you were on, but for those who weren't watching last time, what is Pulp Adventurecon? And you want to talk about how it got started a little bit?
Instead of calling it a con, I probably should call it a show because it's not really, but con is what everybody says these days. But it's just a one-day show. It really kind of started back in the 1980s. I'm not sure who the fellow was, but he started having some pulp people get together. Mm-hmm. And then I guess maybe he lived in a really tiny place, but the next thing you know, a collector named Andy Beagle, who lived in East Brunswick, New Jersey, said, I'll have it at my place. And he lived in a retirement condominium. He had a decent sized place for 5, 6, 10 people. When it got to be a little bit more than 10, he realized he was running out of room. And so Albert Tonic, a collector from Pennsylvania, decided he would start hosting it at his house. And in its heyday, sometimes the show had as many as 30 people, but it was basically a get together. Guys would bring boxes, buy, sell, and trade stuff. They'd eat lunch, they'd hang out. When Albert decided he was not going to continue doing it, I decided, well, I couldn't have it at my place, which was pretty tiny. I mean, it wasn't much bigger than a coffin, really, but I thought I'll have it at a local hotel, and gradually it started getting bigger and bigger until it really
20 how many years ago?
Back in the year 2000.
Wow!
And it basically grew into a full size show with like 50 tables, and we've had some pretty good guests. Last year, F. Paul Wilson showed up, the science fiction author, and he just bought a table. We didn't even realize it was him because he filled out his name differently on the sign-up sheet.
Oh, wow. Interesting.
And Gary Levisi, who publishes Paperback Parade, was there. And he even said, you realize you've got a really significant author here? We've had Gil Cohn, who was a men's adventure artist. Steranko was there one year. And we've had a lot of different interesting guests and attendees.
Yeah, no, that's fantastic. Speaking of the attendees, you want to talk about any of them? Like who you're going to have and some of the stuff people can look forward to? Because when you look at the ad, which I pulled down after, I brought you guys on, it was when I did the intro, and I'm looking at it right now. It says comic books, silver, bronze, gold. pinup mags, paperbacks, artwork, movie memorabilia. I mean, you're going to have, and pulp magazines, obviously, that's the top of there, but you're going to have a wide variety. So this isn't just for, you know, fans of, do you want to use the word pulp? Or, I mean, it's really out there for everybody who's just a collector, correct? If I'm guessing.
Well, there was one fellow who signed up, a guy who does some comic art in the Bronx. And I actually refunded his money and I said, if you want to come as an attendee, you might have fun, but I really don't think you should set up as a dealer, because he was doing artwork, but also keychains and little memorabilia like that. And it was kind of geared toward modern comics and anime and manga. And I said, you may not sell anything to this crowd, because once they get in that room, they've pretty much got blinders on for pulp magazines, men's adventure magazines,
Golden Age.
Yeah, there's a wide variety of material, but really the emphasis is on stuff from the 1970s and earlier, particularly the 1940s and 50s.
Yeah.
Well, I can suggest that we start with Michael Gracia, because he's an artist.
Okay.
He's an artist. And we kind of changed up things. Our first Zorro anthology was strictly, mainline artists. And in the second anthology, we started using a lot of, the first one was all illustrators. This time we used some comic book artists, and you were one of them. And so we could start with that.
And I appreciate that. And believe me, I had Don Smith on last week. We chatted about it. We actually never got to really the point of having him on the show yet. Last week, me and him just went off on tangents, but it was a good show. And we talked about the book, and I'm thrilled to be part of it. I will have. Let me. I'll just talk a little bit very quickly about me. I'm not one to do that, especially on the show, but since you guys are talking about me being at the show, I'm going to give you an example of what I'm going to have there. Some of you who follow me on Instagram and Facebook might have seen some of this stuff, but I've been doing these little pencil drawings of classic comic book characters, pulp characters. And here's a Black Panther I did today, all pencil art, kind of a Kirby-esque style. And I'm gonna have stuff like that there. This is a black bat that I did.
Nice.
Thank you. All pencil. So I'll have things like that there. Being the comic strip artist that I am, that people know my character for, this guy is going to make a bit of an appearance with my character, the Wiz, and I will have some prints of the Wiz and for those who don't know and who will be at the show, this is a comic strip that is coming back in 2023. I did it in 2019, and it feels like old classic comic strips in the sense of going back to the 50s and 60s type of humor stories. So that's going to be there because I think he'll fit in well, hopefully. And that's it on me. Besides some other stuff I'll have. I don't want to talk more about me. Let's go into the other guests.
Well, Rich printed out some table labels, and they're just laying here. So I'll just throw out the names, and Rich knows something about each one. And I posted about each one over the last month or so. So what you want to tell them about Mike Carbonaro? And
Mike Carbonaro is probably legendary in New York circles because he was the founder of the Big Apple Comic-Con, which ran for many, many years. And I think he's actually recently relaunched the show. It's not affiliated with the New York Comic-Con, which now appears at the Jacob Javits Center. His is more of an old style comic show with an emphasis on the comic books, whereas at the Jacob Javits, like many of those big shows, they seem to be drifting away from the comic books and more into media.
Yeah. Speaking of Mike, I will say this about him. I used to go to his show all the time back when it was in the basement up in the church in Columbus Circle.
I was at a few of those.
And he gave me the first 3 months I did his show a table for free. And then he
Ah,
was like, "You got to pay." He was just very nice to me when I was starting. This is back in 1997. He probably will have no clue who I am to this day. But back when I started doing shows in '97, he was the first show I did, and he said you can have a table for free for a couple of months, and he gave me 3 months for free just to kind of get my feet wet. And I'll always be grateful for that.
He came to our Florida show
Mhm.
a couple of years
a couple
ago.
of years ago, and he brought a dog. And we have pictures of the dog manning the table because he circulated through the show and left the dog in charge of his table.
Interesting.
It was pretty
I can
cute.
see that about him. I can
Yeah.
totally see him doing that.
All right.
Next.
Well, the next one on the list here is John Gunnison.
Yeah, John Gunnison of Adventure House is probably the largest seller of pulp magazines in the world. He used to put out these very thick catalogs, and occasionally he still does if there's an estate sale that he's sponsoring. And I think he's even gone so far, not just in reprinting pulps and selling pulp magazines, he also is the co-runner of the Windy City Pulp and Paperback convention out in the Chicago area with Doug Ellis. And John, I think now actually has a website where he does have stuff on eBay from time to time, but he actually runs his own auction site. So he's extremely knowledgeable about pulp magazines.
Well, and how many tables does he have?
Well, out of like 46 tables, John's going to have 5 of them. He basically takes up an entire wall.
So if you can't find it at his table, it doesn't exist. Okay. John French.
John French is an author who writes new pulp fiction. We've published a few things by him.
Yeah.
He's in the Zorro anthologies
His Zorro story in the first anthology won
the Pulp Arc Award.
A Pulp Arc Award as best short story of the year. And he's very well known. There's a little backstory. When I was a reporter, this Miami cop retired and moved up to Daytona. He was well moneyed and he bought a house on the ocean. And I can't remember exactly how it came about, but I did a story about him because he was the Miami Vice cop that they built Sonny Crockett around. And in real life, he had been involved in testifying before Congress on porn and a whole bunch of different things. Anyway, he had published a book, or he had published his own book, but he also had a short story in a book called Bad
Cop No Donut, which John French was in.
Yeah, and I didn't know John French at that time. And so there I was talking about that. And later on, I met John French, and it turned out that he knew that his name is Michael Barish. That was the more or less the cop that they built Sonny Crockett around.
Yeah.
So that was kind of interesting for me to. I guess I knew something about some of the people at this show long before I came to the show.
And one other thing about John French is I illustrated his story in the Zorro book.
Oh yes, that's true. That's
right.
true.
John,
That's true.
Very talented writer. I spoke with him for a good hour straight trying to figure out what parts needed to be illustrated because his stuff was so vivid.
Yeah, his story really is good.
Yeah.
The ending of it is that amazing story. Okay, Steve Erickson has something called Books from the Crypt.
Yeah, Steve Erickson has had a website called Books from the Crypt since 1997. So he was an early entry into the online booksellers. And I've actually purchased a few books from him, so I can vouch for his prices and his service.
Yeah, so he'll have some really nice vintage stuff to look at. Joe Rainone.
Joe Rainone is a collector / dealer who's been in the hobby for many, many years. He sometimes has some very good bargains on his table, but he tends to lean more toward the high-end collectibles, which fortunately I'm not that interested in. One year though, he for $40 he sold me 3 bound volumes of Thrilling Detective, which I thought was a wonderful bargain. It was about 4 or 6 issues per volume, and there was 3 of them, and they were professionally bound into hardcovers, and it even said on the spine editorial office. So somehow these copies went from the original publisher, probably when they were sold to another publisher, and then they circulated out into the collecting world.
Nice.
I turned that more into a comment about me than Joe.
No, but it's
Okay, Mark Bernal.
Mark Bernal is. I need to see the bottom of that paper.
I still have some of the guest list in front of me here. Lesser known comics.
Yes, a comic book publisher who does some pulp related material.
Nice.
And we're seeing some more of those in the small press.
Yes, definitely.
Bold Venture Press is yet to get into comic books, but we'll see what happens one day.
Well, I will have for next year a comic that deals with pulp and stuff. I've been working on it for a while, but I haven't had a chance. So next year's show, I will have pulp style comics at.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So,
Why don't you pick up some of these?
so I will be looking. I'll be looking for Mark. I love those type of books.
Right. Let's see. We've also got Michael Brenner from Brenner's Collectible Books. He's based in the New Jersey area, probably near the shore, and he had a store, a used bookstore you could just walk into, but now I think his store is by appointment only, because although he has some nice bargains, he also deals in some rather high-end stuff. I think that makes it possible to maintain the storefront. And Scott Hartshorn, a collector originally from New Jersey, now based in Florida. He'll have a table. Cowboy Tony of Collectors Unlimited. Cowboy Tony comes in from New Hampshire. I don't even remember what his last name is anymore. It's something that starts with a K, Cowboy Tony K. And he's a real flea market antique shop warrior. He goes and finds boxes and boxes and boxes of wonderful stuff. He's kind of like the farmer bringing us stuff to market. And there's 2 collectors in particular. When they get there, they'll say hello to me. We'll chat for a bit, and they'll say, okay, where's Cowboy Tony? Because they want to hit his stuff before the other dealers hit it.
He sets up every year, and that's where people want to go first. It's Cowboy Tony.
Yeah.
He's got boxes on the floor, tables full of boxes, and he takes out 3 tables.
Yeah.
He takes 3
Wow.
tables. So, yeah.
Yeah, you'd have to dig through Cowboy Tony's stuff a bit. It's not quite as well organized as some of the other dealers, but like I said, it's like going to market and you're getting the produce as it comes off the tree, or comes out of someone's attic, as the case may be. Brendan Faulkner is going to be there. Brendan and Robin of B&R Collectibles, they're based in Connecticut, and I'm not really sure what Brendan is a collector of. He's really knowledgeable about pulps, but he also sells lots of DVDs, and he frequently has some interesting movie posters for sale. And he'll go to a lot of different shows. He'll go to Martin Graham's Mid-Atlantic Nostalgia Convention. He'll set up at an event called Cinefest in Ohio, and various antique paper shows.
There's a little side story with him, too, because when we did Beckman,
Right.
tell him how he took that.
Charles Beckman was a pulp author. He was also a jazz musician, and he had reached out to me in email because I guess he was interested in keeping in touch with people in the pulp community. And I sort of kept in touch with him. I was hoping to get him as a guest, but he was in Texas. He was getting older. When I mentioned to Audrey that I knew him, she said, well, we ought to get in touch with him and do a book about him or something.
Well,
and we
I
did.
had done biographies of pulp authors, so
Right.
for me, I naturally wanted to get his biography on record.
But Charles Beckman had 2 episodes. He had 2 stories adapted to television. One was on Alfred Hitchcock Presents, and another one was adapted on it was NBC Star Theater or one of those, and it was probably one of his best stories. It was called I'll Make the Arrest. and it was originally published in Manhunt. Unfortunately, he didn't own a television at the time, and he was probably doing some jazz gig the night it was broadcast. So he missed the first run and he missed the rerun.
He never saw it.
And here he was in his 90s, and he had more or less resigned himself to the fact that he was going to die without ever having seen it. So I started trying to find a copy of it. Eventually, I found a copy on 16 millimeter reel, which was, I thought maybe I can find it on VHS, but I found it on 16 millimeter, which was even more obsolete than the VHS.
He sent it to Brendan Faulkner, and Brendan put it on a disc and
a DVD,
and we were able to send it to Charles Beckman.
Well, actually, I sent it to Martin Grams, who wasn't in a position at that moment to do it. So at some show, he handed it to Brendan, and he didn't quite explain what it was. So when I called up Brendan, I said to him, I explained to him, it's an author, that's his story, he'd like to see it. Oh, okay. And I said, well, listen, Charles Beckman is 94 years old and he's not in great health. And Brendan said, oh, I better get right on it. And a couple of weeks later, we got a couple DVDs in the mail and we sent it to Charles Beckman. And he said the first night he got it, he watched it 3 times and read the story just to compare it with a TV show. And he was delighted with how faithfully they
really
had adapted it.
Fulfilling for all of us.
They had some really recognizable actors in that show, many of whom may not be familiar to television viewers today, but Philip Carey, who was in a TV show called Laredo. He also played Philip Marlowe in a weekly TV series. Virginia Vincent was in it, and a few other notable actors. Probably actors you would recognize in a heartbeat if you watched The Untouchables.
Yeah.
Anyway, that was very fulfilling. And that Brendan Faulkner is the one that has a table filled with things of that nature that he can do.
He's usually the last guy to pack up because he brings so much stuff.
But he's also been a filmmaker, right?
Yes, he was a stuntman. He did a lot of the driving in The French Connection. So you can ask him about that too. And he did second unit work on Kojak in New York City.
Wow.
I mentioned Martin Grams. I think you know who he is. He runs the Mid-Atlantic Nostalgia Convention, and he's written dozens of books about old-time radio dramas like The Lone Ranger and The Green Hornet. In fact, his Lone Ranger book was nominated for some awards. Really? One of them might have even been a Pulitzer or something. And then Gary Levisi of Gryphon Books is going to be there. Gary really specializes in hard-boiled fiction, not just writing it, but also sometimes reprinting it. And he published a magazine called Hard Boiled for many years. And he's the publisher of Paperback Parade.
And you said that's Gary?
Gary Levisi, Gryphon Books.
Okay, I'm just looking at the list as you say. And that's Griffin Brooks, it says, is his
right
stuff there. Nice.
Bruce Tinkell is also another movie dealer who also does pulp magazines and posters. He's usually there with his wife and Sharon, and I hesitated to say her name because I always call her Barb, and she's got to correct me, Sharon, but I got it right that time. And it's on video for the record.
I think of all the shows that I've been to, they often have the table next to ours.
Right.
And they made the largest sale, I think, that time. How much was that?
Well, one time they sold about $10,000 worth of pulps, and they were delighted because they had set up at ChillerCon and didn't sell much, but then they set up at our show and sold a lot. And I said, well, when you're going to bring magazines like the first issue of The Shadow, the first issue of Doc Savage, first issue of The Spider, you're going to make some money hand over fist.
Yeah. No, that all sounds amazing. I mean, I got I got to say, even before you finish, it sounds like I'm going to have to bring a lot more money than just the change I come with that I would have to make when I sell. Because if I come with just the change, I'm not going to have change to make for people. It already sounds like I'm going to be dropping a lot of money.
Well, one artist, Alan Kay, who put out a magazine called Inhuman. Mm-hmm. The first year he set up at the show, within a few hours, I think he had sold over $500 worth of stuff, like his artwork and stuff. And I said, hey, that's great. And he said, yeah, but then I walked around the room and I spent $600. And the following year I said, too bad you're not making any money. He said, oh no, I'm making money this year because my wife is here and she's giving me a percentage of every sale to buy stuff I like, but I can't spend it all this year.
That's funny because my wife would be the same way if I brought her to a show.
Yeah.
Her thing wouldn't be I'll give you a percentage. Her thing would be, do you really need it? That's what she would ask me. Do you really need that?
Well, the easy answer.
Say yes, then she would be like, where does it go in your studio? Because it's you should see this place and move around. Some days it's a maze. I had to change my furniture around so I could just walk straight in and not
have to climb over anything.
Yeah.
Well, we also have some collectors: Walker Martin, Paul Herman, Scott Hartshorn. They are dealers / collectors. And sometimes there's some of the best dealers at a show because you may find some really good bargains at their table. William Carney's going to be there. He has a partner. They call their business Giger and Archer Books.
Oh, yeah.
I know Archer is named after Miles Archer. I'm not sure who Giger is named after.
They also, I believe, have a brick and mortar store.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Teal James.
That's probably the artist. I don't know. I pronounces it. Is it Geiger? Like H.R. Geiger?
Geiger, probably, yeah.
Yeah.
Also, Teal James Glenn is a pulp author who will be there.
Yeah, he was in the 2 anthologies, but he also, maybe just the second one.
Yeah.
But we've published a few things of his, including a trilogy, a really good trilogy about the movie business. And it's a fantasy, but it's so real that you believe it.
The golden age of Hollywood.
It's really good. He's a good writer.
It's inspired a little bit like The Thin Man, only it goes off to some really bizarre tangents.
Yeah, but he's a really good writer.
The Thin Man, if written by Dashiell Hammett but revised by Monty Python, you might say. Ed Hulse of Marania Press is going to be at the show, and he's put out a number of pulp-related books. Hard research, but also he's probably best known for publishing Blood and Thunder, which is I guess he puts it out twice a year, and it covers pulps, but also covers movie serials. I think his publication leans a little more heavily toward movie serials.
He was also big into the Western genre,
right?
In his career of doing pulp things, and he's met tons of actors and actresses of the earlier age, and he posts their picture and follows their lives right up to the end, because a lot of them are in their final years, let's say. Yeah. And he's a good guy to watch on Facebook as well.
Cool. I want to just say I'm sorry. I just want to say I added the link into the comments. Dylan and a couple of other people have been asking about certain people. Maybe they missed the names and stuff. If you go to the link for Pulp Adventurecon that I just posted and click on the guests and vendors, you can see everybody they're talking about. And some have active links that you can check out their stores and stuff.
I was kind of driving her nuts because she likes to promote the show, but some of these guys don't have stores. They don't have websites.
Yeah.
They don't have a Facebook presence, so there's not a whole lot to promote.
Well, there is, if I can get a hold of them or, find the right thing, because everyone has an interesting story. But, when you're trying to sitting in front of the computer trying to make an ad and you can't get them on the phone, then that one has to wait until tomorrow and you keep trying.
I understand. Putting on a show, sometimes that's the hardest part. Is because I had a partner that I put the shows on with, and doing the advertising, a lot of that was on me at the time, and trying to hook everybody up and connect on social media and make sure that they have the proper links in their store, and it was nuts. It was nuts. That part drove me crazy.
Well,
but,
see, I start out crazy nuts, so it doesn't matter. I get it.
let's see. Did we miss anyone? I'm trying. Rick Hall. I know we missed.
Oh, yeah, Rick.
Oh, I meant to mention him. Yeah,
Oh,
Rick is a Connecticut area collector. He's very knowledgeable about the Muncie publications, especially railroad stories, and he's helped us out with those anthologies. And he's very, very knowledgeable about the author James B. Hendricks. In fact, I know he's met some of the surviving relatives of that author. Hendricks was a frequent contributor to Argosy and short stories.
mhm,
He wasn't really a hero pulp writer, but he wrote lots of good dramatic and humorous short stories.
nice.
You didn't say anything about the guy always erroneously say Doc Ock, and he's
No, it's Professor Ouch. I don't know what his real name is. I saw it somewhere, but Professor Ouch had a store in Philadelphia for several years. What did he call it? The Bazaar and Auditorium. And he was actually at our show as a shopper a few years ago, and he paid me for 2 tables, but then he had a few health issues. And so now he's back, and he said, can I have those 2 tables I paid for several years ago? And we said, yes, they're waiting for you. And he's another one of those dealers that has stuff. He may lean toward movie memorabilia, but he dabbles in everything.
especially weird.
Well, from the name of his thing, I would think it's especially weird stuff. Yeah.
Right.
I just want to go to the comments real quick. Dylan, I just drop me a link and I will watch what you send me. Wayne Carey says I will be joining Teal James Glenn at his table this year. So
Yes, Wayne came out with a science fiction book, which we were lucky enough to publish because I know he's all over the place, but he is a really good writer, and he was at the last show also.
Yes, yes.
But I'm especially looking forward to seeing them because he and his wife and I became really good friends at that show. So I'm looking forward to seeing them. So he and Teal are going to share a table. And his
Nice.
science fiction story is called Erin.
it's called
And
what?
Erin, Erin.
Oh yeah, I remember speaking with you about that. It sounded very
Yeah.
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really good. I mean, we're lucky to get authors like this because they should be on the bestseller list.
Mhm.
But as you know, the publishing companies don't work like that anymore.
Yeah.
Unless you already are famous or have a name or have a lot of money to promote yourself. Those authors don't really necessarily get a shot. So we're really happy when they come to us with their wonderful stuff.
I think Teal's going to give him a little more than 6 inches of his table, though.
I listen. I've shared tables with Ray before. I can literally cut the table in half if Ray really wants to. But I believe me when I'm breaking. These are 4.5 by 4.5 inch square pieces. They don't take up a lot of room. You know,
Right.
It's
Don't they have a name for those, like sketch cards or something?
Oh, they're close to sketch cards. This was actually, I did a craft with a bunch of kids when I was working with a bunch of kids, and we would make. I can't remember if this was for a magnet thing we did, or if this was for. I think this was for a popsicle puzzle. So what we would do is we'd take the sheet of paper and I'd have them draw on it, color, whatever, and then I would have them glue to the back popsicle sticks, right? Or craft sticks, whatever you want to call them, and really tight up against each other. And then when it dried, I would take an X-Acto knife and cut each in between each strip so they'd have a puzzle to put together. So I had so many pieces of this paper left over. I literally have probably another, like, it's over there, probably 75 sheets of these. So basically, I will have as many as I can draw until Saturday morning. when I have to go for the ride down.
We did forget one table.
Yes.
Old Venture Press.
Ah, yes.
Oh, we
We
were going
are-
to get to them. Don't worry.
We have lots of books, and let me tell you, we went through an ordeal to get our books to this show. Besides the ones that we can carry on the plane because there's a limited number of
Yes.
pounds that we can carry, we ordered books and had them shipped to the hotel. And unbeknownst to us, they split the order into two. And we told them the books were coming, and they accepted the first box, but then they rejected the second box.
Oh my God.
And we went through 2 hours of customer service calls to try to resolve that. And I believe we did. We won't know until tomorrow because they're supposed to be delivered tomorrow, and we'll see.
God, I feel so
And
bad.
we asked the hotel, please don't reject the books. And, to get them printed over again was an ordeal.
Yeah.
And, but we're going to have books. Lots of
My heart dropped hearing that because I've done things where I've had to ship to places and they didn't arrive in time. Oh,
Ugh,
God. And it's like, and for me, just going with my stuff to a show that's out of state and I had stuff shipped and they don't show up until like the end of the show or something.
Yeah,
it's like you're sitting there for a day or two with your sketchbook, really, because
There
that's all
you
you
go.
carry on a plane,
Well, at Amazon, the customer service rep Ren was superior. He spent literally hours
2 hours.
on the phone with us trying to find a solution to getting the books to the hotel on time.
Yeah.
And if it all works out, I'm telling you what, he should get a raise and a promotion because he was unrelenting in trying to help us.
Yeah.
Also, when we called KDP, they said you should go over to KDP Retail and see if they can help you since it was more of a shipping issue. And at first, he was wondering if we couldn't just order the books through the regular website. And I explained to him, he kept asking about the seller. And I said, well, you don't understand. These are print on demand books. So actually, we're the seller. And when we explained to him also, instead of buying them at full retail, we wanted to buy them through KDP because we're the publisher. So we get to order author copies at a much lower cost.
Yeah.
And that's when he realized, oh, okay. And apparently it never occurred to him. And I suspect it doesn't occur to a lot of people at Amazon that the retail side and the KDP side are two completely different territories, which would explain why I get frustrated on the phone because a lot of the Amazon reps, they only know their department. And he was actually very happy that he was on the phone with us because now he finally understood there's a major difference between us ordering author copies and ordering copies of someone else's book.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that'll make things any easier for other people. But
he was wonderful. He was wonderful. And if the books show up tomorrow.
Yeah.
I have my fingers crossed for you, man.
It'll be our Rocky moment.
Can't imagine.
There in front of the hotel.
Oh God! Just when you said that they rejected, my heart literally just I was like,
you know how we felt. I mean, my God, what?
The rejection came at the hotel because I ordered all these books, and instead of one big shipment, they sent them in 2 shipments. Yeah. So whoever was at their front desk the first day knew to accept the box. Whoever was there the second day didn't know. So half of our order got sent back home to wherever Amazon's home is.
Another problem, though, is the first box was delivered by Amazon. The second box, apparently, they handed off to the post office. Yeah. And so the post office, who they had our phone number, but they didn't bother to give us a call. And so when they turned around and they said, well, we don't think that that's for us at the hotel. They just turned around and shipped it back to Amazon. They didn't even call. They didn't do anything. I have a feeling if it had been Amazon, they would have pursued getting that box delivered somehow.
Yeah.
Or called us and said, "What's the deal here?" But
anyway. Amazon probably could have reached the driver and said, "Wherever those books are, take them back."
Yeah.
Oh
my God.
The post office just,
Listen, the post office always. I've had issues with them. I've had issues with Amazon as well, but Amazon at least has like usually drop offs locally if people don't pick up. Like
Right.
they have like I have a supermarket near me that's an Amazon drop off. So now I get my stuff, but sometimes they used to just walk away if I didn't answer my door quick enough, and they would put a little note, did not, and they would specifically just do that really quick,
Yeah.
and I'd have to go after 2 days. I'd have to go to the supermarket to pick up my packages, and then the supermarket, that was the harder part because they would say they don't have them,
Mm.
and they
Oh,
would just have piles of boxes. They just didn't want to look through and move boxes.
yeah, nobody wants
Like
them.
I knew what kind of how big the pack. I'd be like, no, I think it's that box. I would not move until they checked for me.
Or
Wow.
And
some of these places also have the Amazon lockers,
yeah,
so they can put your boxes in there and lock them up, and then you have a code to go and pick it up, and you type it in, and it's almost like a lot of these old film noir movies where somebody leaves something in the locker at the bus station or the
yeah, yeah,
airport.
yeah.
Well, you're not using a key; you're using a code that you type in. But I think from the time they put it in that locker, you've only got about 3 or 4 days to retrieve it.
Wow, that's interesting. I've heard about. It. I've never actually seen those the lockers. I've heard about that.
Yeah.
Someone else told me about that. That's
Where
pretty
did
cool.
we see them? At a
I,
7-Eleven.
I saw them at a 7-Eleven up the
Wow.
street from me. I ordered a copy of Pulp Adventures, our quarterly, and
Mhm.
instead of having it come here, I had it go to the locker just so I could see how it worked. It wasn't too bad. I don't know what they would do with a larger box. I suppose there's like floor level lockers that
Yeah,
would take much larger boxes. But I could see how it's much easier to get a small package from there than a big package.
In defense of Amazon, though, we published a book that was connected to NASCAR, and the author lives in Daytona Beach, and he was going to be signing
Sands of
books
time, right?
at the Speedway gift shop during one of the events, and we ordered him 75 books, and they didn't show. And we called Amazon and said, what happened? And they tracked down, I don't know where they went,
Yeah.
but they weren't going to be there in time. And we told them of this. They did an immediate turnaround,
Yeah.
and those books were delivered like in a day and a half in time for the event. And after the event, the other books showed up, and they said, just keep them. So we gave them to the author.
wow, that's
And
nice.
you don't think he was happy.
And eventually the author and the Speedway sold out of them.
Yeah, yeah. Wow, that's awesome though. I've never listen. I have never had issues like that with Amazon, where it's been that crazy. But it's good to know that they could be on top of things when they need be.
The only problem was back in April, we were getting ready for the Windy City convention, and something happened where I thought I had placed an order for all these books, and somehow the order did not go through.
Wow.
So we weren't charged for it, but no books were in production.
Yeah.
And one Amazon rep said, we will get the books, we will have them all printed 2 days before the show, and we will overnight them to the show. And the shipping would have been something like $200 when they said, we won't charge you for the shipping. And we said, well, thanks, but no thanks. And she couldn't understand. Oh, well, she was going out of her way to help us. And I said, yeah, but even if you overnight them, $200 shipping, and you don't charge us, they're not going to get there till Monday, like 24 hours after we're back in Florida.
Yeah, yeah.
Unless the books sit there for a year waiting for us to come to the next Windy City show, which actually would be convenient for us, but not the hotel.
Yeah, exactly. Wow.
Yeah.
Oh man, I
Anyway,
can't believe all that.
hopefully we'll know tomorrow if it turns out good. So
I'm sure. Listen, I got my fingers crossed. I have faith. I
We'll find out tomorrow, same bat time.
think. Oh man, I'm gonna feel terrible if it doesn't work out for you guys. But
We're gonna
the show isn't till Saturday. There's still time, even if it doesn't show up tomorrow. There is
Correct.
still time for it to show up. Which, by the way, we didn't really talk too much about it. It's Saturday, November 5th, 10 a.m. to 5 p.m. At the I can't remember the name of the place now.
Home to Suites in Bordentown.
Home two
Borden,
suites.
Home Two Suites in Bordertown, New Jersey, which where I live, which is
Right.
close to New York City, is about an hour and a half or 2 hours depending on traffic. So
And
I
it's a
will
very
be.
quality place. It's a Hilton.
It's a what?
Hilton.
Oh, that's a nice nice hotel there. So you know it's going to be really really good place to go. And because I think I know you guys are going to want to wrap up because you're leaving tomorrow. So we're going to wrap up. I don't want you guys going, being all tired and stuff for your flight tomorrow.
We got a little more time. You don't have to worry.
Okay, listen, I can sit and chat with you guys about whatever, and I'm looking here at the website, and I'm seeing like covers to different books that I'm like, oh, I believe that Amazing Stories had the first issue, had the first story of Buck Rogers in there, and I mean, I could sit and talk to you about that type of stuff and all
That,
day, but
that issue of Amazing Stories did have the first installment of the first Buck Rogers story ever
yeah,
published by Philip Nolan.
yeah,
But that guy on the cover is
is
flying around with a jetpack. That's not Buck Rogers.
yeah,
That actually illustrates a story called The Skylark of Space. And everyone always reminds me of that when I refer to it as the Buck Rogers issue. And I say, I don't care. I know it's the
yeah.
Skylark of Space, but
You
it's
guys,
Buck Rogers.
this is the. Did I'm sharing the entire screen here? Okay.
Right there, yeah.
Yeah, this one right here is what we're talking about. And one of the
Right.
reasons I mentioned it about Buck Rogers is I just like to listen to YouTube videos while I'm working, like just some nonsense. I don't really watch stuff unless I've seen it before, or it's just some kind of like little biographies. And I was just watching a biography on YouTube about Buck Rogers. I did like the whole thing, Flash Gordon, Tarzan, like all the old comic strip stuff, and I was watching, and that they showed that God, I don't know how many times during that documentary. But yeah, I mean, you got this is all fun stuff. I wish I can look at all the. Also,
And
I know the Batman piece right here very well. Just seeing the feet, being the
The Bat
comic.
Lady.
an
Yeah.
artist who's a friend of ours, her name is Sarah Lightwaller. She
Mhm.
took that cover and recreated that. Uh, what's the character called on the cover?
I'm not sure which cover.
This one right here.
Not Buck Rogers. That's not Buck Rogers.
No, the not
Yeah.
Buck
With a
Rogers.
capital N.
She recreated that on her garage door, and an enlarged version of that
Wow,
on her garage door of a two-car garage, no less.
wow, that is nice.
So
I
I'm sure she has neighbors who can't appreciate that.
It's funny. I was at my local comic shop the other day, and we were talking about like just covers from this era and how just like gorgeous they were. Like nothing we see today. I picked up. It's not close to me, otherwise I'd show it. But I picked up a Dr. Solar book, like a reprints from like the '60s and some '80s stuff, and just the covers and the cover art is so much different than what we see now, and like there's just a level of I don't know what word I want to use, beauty, a lot of craftsmanship just in the artwork that were on these covers. And I'm looking at this stuff here and I'm just seeing that, and this is some of the stuff actually I'm looking forward to going and seeing at the show, or just like old books. And I could, there are books I might just buy for the cover. I used to do that when I was a kid and used to draw the covers.
Right.
That's how I am as an artist. But
Well,
yeah.
the covers, they say, sold the pulps, but
yeah,
I was always of the opinion that the covers would sell it, but then eventually it came down to the quality of the writing,
yeah,
because that 10 cents just for a cover, you had to have a great story to back it up.
yeah.
Yeah,
No, you're right.
they do pop. They do pop.
Yeah,
The comic book artists, they had a knack also. And we did the biography of Alan Bellman, who was the Captain America artist
Mhm.
of the early years. And he he used to love in his ads and things to put the word "wow" or something like that in yellow with a
Yeah.
big splashy kind of a star thing around it. And that's what I
Yeah.
think of when I see the covers and the way they pop. That
Yeah.
makes me always think of the way Alan Bellman used to describe things. Wow.
The pulps were very peculiar in that respect because a lot of the cover artists, like John Newton Howett, he was a painter of portraits, and he was doing very well. But of course, to supplement his income, he was painting. He was painting portraits, very elegant portraits of women and men and families. But to also supplement his income, he was painting covers for magazines like Terror Tales and Horror Stories and The Spider over at Popular Publications. And
Yeah.
he was actually kind of worried that it would hurt his portrait business. So I think he spelled his name differently for the covers. But you can tell by looking at his covers, he was classically trained. He knew anatomy. He knew how to direct a reader's eye around the cover. But of course, Harry Steger, the publisher of Popular Publications, was always saying, emphasize the reds and yellows. So he was painting the figures in a very classic manner, but he was probably using these garish color schemes he never would have used on his own, except Steger knew that the pulp covers had to pop on the newsstand, especially when in any given month in the 1930s, there might be as many as 100 to 200 magazines competing for your attention on the newsstand.
Wow. Yeah, no, I just think about things like that, like the way those look. People. When you look at the artists that drew the comics when I was a kid, they tell stories about how they would go to bookstores and steal like covers of Frazetta art. And I'm just thinking how and I listen, I got 2 Frazetta pieces hanging up in my studio, and I got like 3 more rolled up in my closet. I mean, I love Frazetta work, but I go back and I look at all these old things, and I'm just thinking like when those were on the cover, when these pieces were on the cover, were there kids like that just wanting to grab the books because they just wanted to study the art, and the stuff was just really on a whole other level. And it's one of those things that I know I aspire to, which I'll never get to because I don't do that level of work. I don't do that level of detail, but I can sit and find all this gorgeous, man. This is just amazing. And let me scroll down. I don't even know what else we got down here. So just other stuff. We got comics, some magazines here.
Well, if you click on a couple of the different links for the different pages,
Yeah.
there should be other covers that pop up in the banners.
So this is the vendor lineup, which we were on. They don't have that. Let's see. Oh, let's go to collectible stuff.
Yes, there's a good page.
Yeah.
There we go.
Oh,
There's another Batman cover.
yeah. God, I love
There's
it.
Betty Brosmer.
Wow.
And Steve McQueen. I'm very selective in some of these images because I want you to know that the emphasis of the show is on Pulp Fiction, but
Yeah.
then again, there's all the other stuff that comes in. Years decades ago, Rusty Hevlin, who was one of the founders of the original PulpCon, they kind of had this rule that they only wanted pulp magazines at the show.
Yeah.
And at the first PulpCon I went to in Cherry Hill, New Jersey, back in 1984, someone wrote a report afterward and said, "Oh, I noticed there's a lot more paperbacks in the dealer room this year. The committee might want to think about that." I mean, they were really, really pretty stringent. And unfortunately, I think as the years go by, you have to allow more collectibles to come in to keep the hobby alive. And not only that, but some of our best dealers were guys who started out who only had a few pulp magazines. Gerasol, Adventure House, and a few other guys. They started out as people who were fans and started dealing, and eventually they built themselves up into the top of the line pulp dealers.
Nice. Wow. This is all. I mean that's fantastic. I mean, listen, I love the story of how this started because it's just a group of guys that had a common interest and really it was them just hanging out, and then it just blew into something big. I mean, I love stories like that. You
Mhm.
know, it's kind of how a lot of cons started too. That I of people that I know would just who put cons on. Man,
Yeah.
this is great though. I mean, I'm looking at the what actually caught my eye were these little comics on the girls in gag here. You
Now,
know,
why is that?
I will tell you why.
You know,
On the
there's a woman standing in front of that too. It took me a
I
while to
saw
get to the cartoon.
I saw the woman, and then I saw the comics. But I'm a big fan of Dan DeCarlo, who he's passed on now, but Dan DeCarlo, who is known for really designing the look of Archie and did a lot of art stuff, created Josie and the Pussycats, all the, did a lot of great stuff. He did some of the best like pinup comics, like the way he drew women, the way he drew stuff. A friend of mine sent me one of his comics today, and we were just talking about Dan DeCarlo's art, and like I saw that even though this isn't what Dan looked like, this is actually uh, oh, the signature's on there. If I could read the signature, I probably know who it is. But if you want to see some really great comics from that era, from the 50s, from the 60s, that had that like pinup kind of girl type of, they it doesn't get better than Dan DeCarlo's art. They actually have books on his pinup art, and I had at least one of them, and to this day I don't know where it is. I don't know if I
Oh,
lost it in my move. I don't
yeah.
know what happened to it. It was one of my all-time favorite books because and I worked at Archie for a while, and I got to know Dan, and I never brought that book in on the days I knew Dan was going to be there. It always bothered me. I could have got him to sign it,
Uh,
you know. And now that he's passed on, I don't. I know I never will. But it was some of the best stuff I've ever seen, um, in that type of humor. I want just in drawing. So it's this is great stuff. If I click on, are these links to anything, or they're just pictures?
They may just be
Yeah,
pictures. I thought about having a link
yeah.
with a little detailed explanation about each type of publication, and I thought, nah, I don't feel like doing that. In previous years, I had very lengthy explanations about who every dealer was, and I just thought it got to be too much work. And
Yeah,
but a lot of them have active links to their own site.
yeah, exactly. No, I understand. I get it. I get it. Wow. Excuse me. Wow. I'm just looking at all this stuff here, man. I love the. What is that? It's supposed to be. Is that a mountain lion? I think
Where's that?
the bottom one here, a mountain lion jumping on attacking the
It
girl.
sure is. That's a mountain lion.
Yeah, that is. I
No
love it.
shortage of them. Them and snakes in the men's adventure magazines.
Yeah, I saw. I'm not a snake fan, so I try to avoid them.
The men's adventure magazines were sort of the successor to the pulps.
Mm, wow. Yeah, I can't. I have trouble looking at snakes. I got to be honest with you. That's the one thing that really.
She doesn't like frogs.
I'm not. I mean, I don't mind frogs, but snakes. They just. I've had little run-ins when I was a kid, so
Oh, really?
I have a little PTSD when it comes to snakes.
yeah.
It's not something I like.
No, I don't know anybody that likes snakes.
Oh, I know quite a few actually. I know people who keep them and have them as pets.
Larry
But-
Kenton is a book dealer, but he usually can't come to the Pulp Adventurecon because he runs a reptile convention, and he sometimes gets as many as 800 to 1,000 people,
Yeah.
which means maybe we're in the wrong racket.
I was just gonna say it, but I would never attend that con.
No,
I did
Never-
when I was a reporter. I did a story about an airplane pilot whose second. I mean, he did this secondary career alongside of his piloting. He and he'd kill me that I'm going to say this, but I can't remember all the correct wording. He actually milked snakes for their venom and sold it for the antivenom. And he loved it so much that he set up a sort of a little museum, and where he did actually extract the venom, he put a glass viewing room so that the people that came, if he happened to be there doing it, could see him doing it. And I did a story about it, and I was in there when he pulled some of those dangerous snakes out and took their venom. He obviously liked snakes.
I mean, I think that's kind of a cool gig. I mean, it's a dangerous one, but I mean, that's kind of, he, at the end of the day, he's doing stuff to help people and
Yeah,
save lives, and I think that's totally awesome. But
he built his museum and place where he does that very near a hospital, and then he provided them with the anti-venom just in case.
Wow.
Better him than you,
No,
right?
but he had been bitten several times in his career. So.
Better him than you.
Yeah, exactly. Wow, and I could imagine that's not that safe of a job. That got to keep a few anti-venoms on.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder how you get insurance for that kind of a profession.
I bet you don't.
Oh my God! Wow, I couldn't imagine. I just, those are things you don't think about, like the jobs out there that people can have. Wow. Man, this is awesome. I'm getting more and more excited for the show. I'm getting more.
Well, in just a few days, and we'll see you there.
Yeah.
Yes, definitely. And let me just ask. I know, Liz, because I everyone's going to have a different thing, but with the way things are in the world now, I mean, New Jersey, this area, because of the size, they're not going to require you to mask up. I know some shows are still requiring you to mask up. If you don't want to wear a mask, you can. If you don't, you don't. Right?
That's correct.
Right.
That's correct.
Because I heard recently a couple of shows are still asking people to do that.
No, we'll have some. We can have some supplies available. I suppose we did it all since COVID came in. We still had our show every year, and during the thickest part of the COVID pandemic, we had a big room with few tables, but it was still very successful.
Yeah.
And we had supplies available, and the
little show that could, because Windy City, all the others postponed their shows until the following year. And a few people said they couldn't even believe the hotel was letting us have a show. Although we were concerned about that, because at one point it looked like a couple of police officers who had stopped at the hotel might come back and shut us down.
The woman who was the person in charge of hosting the show for she was with the hotel, and she said to us when we came and set up, she said, "I'm sort of afraid for you, because there was some sort of a party here either the week or the night before," and she said, "and the police came and they shut it down." And I said, "I don't think we'll have any trouble even if the police do come, because we had our tables the required length apart. The entrance table had all the, we had a temperature taker and all the things that we needed for that. Mm-hmm. We offered masks and gloves and everything. And also, when you go to a pulp show, it's not like a rock show. I mean, you might hear voices of people talking, but it's not a loud, boisterous party. And people are very intense and looking over the supply, whatever's there. And Rick's father, Dick Harvey, was with me at the entrance table taking admissions. And sure enough, 2 officers walked down the hall. Now, the men's and ladies' rooms were in that hallway. And they walked down halfway and stopped and looked at each other like they were talking to each other. And I could tell that they were listening. And there wasn't anything to hear. So one of the guys went into the restroom for men, and the other one uh, went out, left the area. The one that was in the men's room came back out and turned toward our table and listened again. And he looked over our table. He didn't say anything. We didn't say anything. He smiled, turned around, and left.
Wow.
He probably
So-
figured there was nobody at the event because he couldn't hear anything.
Yeah.
Everybody was digging through boxes of books.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, that's great, though. I mean, that's great. And listen, you guys did it well. I'm not saying you need to provide, or I wasn't asking. For me, I just was curious for those attending, those, how it is going to be, because I don't remember where the shows were. I don't know if they were Jersey shows or not. But I've just heard in the last month that there were some shows still requiring. So I was wondering if you had any specific, or the hotel gave you any specific guidelines on that. Okay.
No. Well, we're not crazy, Nobody wants to get sick, so
no,
it'll be safe. It'll be safe.
Is there anything you're thinking of looking for at the show, Mike, or are you just looking in general?
I want to. Well, it's good. It's going to be an in general look, but I collect Silver Age books, like Silver Age comics.
Yeah.
That's my biggest influences on my art are like Silver Age, mostly DC books, but I also collect a lot of like the old cartoon, and I don't know if they'll be there, but they're from that era of the 50s and 60s. The old cartoon character books, like when Looney Tunes or any Hanna-Barbera stuff, like that era of that's like what I specifically collect comic wise, so if there's anything there like that, Silver Age, superhero DC books or old Dell books or things like that, I love. I like that's what I go nuts for at Comic Cons in book form. But I'm always looking around that, just books to read. Always looking for new stuff. I'm looking around. I want to see like what kind of collectibles are there, like actual things I could, I don't know, place in my suit. I don't have anything specific in mind off the top of my head, but I like different decor, as you can tell, behind me. So if there's something cool I see that would be a cool looking prop or something for the back, for this backdrop, I'll see it. I like figures. I have my I know I got ripped off on it, but behind me I got a Phantom figure behind me here. I can't even reach it. Hold on. I want to knock stuff over. I realize this is fake, but I got my Phantom. So I love this piece right here. He's got everything though: the gun, the rifle, the ring, everything is on here. But so I don't know. Maybe if I see something cool like that, or I'm always interested in things I've never seen before or learned about. I'm a big fan of history, and specifically the history of heroes, the hero stories in comics. Like you have a Doc Savage. Oh, well, you don't see it on the screen now, but you had Doc Savage. Doc Savage was the precursor to Superman, to Batman, to all these heroes that I grew up loving, and like if I see something cool that's with that, that like as an artist, I could always say, Jerry Ordway is one of my favorite all-time artists. I'm a big Sergio Aragonés fan. I'm a big fan of, I can name it. But when I look at the comics that I like of more modern artists, I always go back and see who they like. So, and one of my teachers was Tom Gill. Now, Tom Gill, if you don't know who Tom Gill was,
he illustrated the Lone Ranger.
Illustrated the Lone Ranger. He hated my inking. I could tell you stories about how he would be like, he would look at my work and I had him when he was in his 80s and he was going blind. And he had this thing, he had to hold the paper at a distance, at an angle, whatever he had. But he was so sharp, he could pinpoint anything. Another teacher of mine was Richard Rockwell, also known as Dick Rockwell for those who actually knew him. But he was the inker on the Steve Canyon strip, and when Mill Kniff passed away, he finished the strip for the year, and then that was it. But he was an amazing teacher. But he brought me into all these older looking artists, and I started looking at people like Hal Foster and Alex Raymond, and learning from them and studying their work. So all the people that were like inspired, that I grew up loving, that were drawing comics in the 80s and stuff and 90s, were looking at it, were influenced by the people like I just mentioned, Hal Foster and whoever. So I tend to look for things like that as well. I kind of go all over the place. I'm into everything that would fall within the geek culture.
Well, you're probably going to be happy if you share the table with someone, because then you can get up and walk around.
Ray, if you're still listening, what is the table? 6 feet long?
6.
Ray, you got 2.5 to 3 feet. It grew. But seriously, Ray, if you want, I do will take time to walk around. I do want to see stuff. I've never been to an official Pulp Con before, so I don't know 100% what to expect. But I understand, but it's not like I've never read Pulp books before or anything. It's, I just want to be exposed, and if something is good there and looks interesting to me, I'll give it a shot. I'm happy to give everything a try that doesn't break my budget.
Well, there are people who came to our one-day show, and then almost immediately afterward, you would see them at the Chicago show or the Pittsburgh show. They got their feet wet at our show and then went on to the bigger shows. And some people you'll see at Pulp Fest in Windy City, you'll never see at our show because it's only a one-day regional thing. But there are collectors you see at our show that you never see at the other shows because it's close to their home and they're not going to travel either because they don't have the inclination, or maybe they're getting up there in years.
Yeah.
We had a similar show in Florida, by the way, in the spring. And we the first couple of years it was lightly attended, and then the COVID year,
2020,
wow,
because people were so hungry to get out from under that COVID blanket that it was overwhelming.
2021, John Gunnison and
gosh,
Ed Hulse, Mike Carbonaro. Mike Carbonaro was going to have a big Apple Comic Con that same day, but the city then informed him that they wouldn't let him have it. So he hopped the flight to Fort Lauderdale and did our show.
Wow. And that's where you host your show, Fort Lauderdale? That one?
The Florida show,
yeah. That's what I meant.
The Jersey show was in Bordentown.
No, that's what I meant.
Lauderdale. We've had a couple different locations.
Yeah.
The last couple of years, it's been in Dania Beach, and we'll probably look around for maybe a different place there too, possibly. But if not, it's a Hilton, and it's like the one in New Jersey. So it's really a classy place. You take the airplane to the Fort Lauderdale airport, and they have a free shuttle to the hotel.
Yeah.
So,
we've
hard.
had very good luck having the shows at Hilton's.
Yeah, that's great. No, they're a great hotel. I've been to a lot of shows at the Hilton, and even in Jersey. I just never been to this one here.
It's a really nice one.
That's good. That's great. I know when I'm in Jersey, I mean, the furthest I've ever driven for a show in Jersey was Atlantic City. But how far away is it's because
Atlantic City from Bordentown is probably another hour to an hour and a half.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah, because it said the different times I've looked on my GPS, it said about an hour and a half to 2 hours, depending what time of day I looked.
Right.
And Atlantic City is a good 3-hour drive for me.
Bordentown is at exit 7 of the New Jersey Turnpike, which is another reason I picked it. I wasn't sure. The first show we had was actually in a fire hall in Medford in my parents' neighborhood. And it was okay, but there were a few problems with the discrepancies. So I said, I want to find someplace really convenient, either off Interstate 295 or the New Jersey Turnpike. So over the course of 2 days, It was a Tuesday or a Wednesday, actually. I drove to Delaware where I knew there was a comic book show being held right over the Delaware Memorial Bridge.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't think it was going to work. So then I got on the New Jersey State Turnpike and I stopped at exit 1. And right near the Delaware Memorial Bridge, there's a lot of small hotels that were very inexpensive, but the facilities all seem just a little too cramped, and also they're kind of off the highway, and it's very difficult to find where you're going. It's basically like a little truck stop town.
Yeah.
So then I got up and went up to exit 2, then ducked over to 295 to see what was near there, and I just worked my way up to the Bordentown Trenton area. That's where the New Jersey Turnpike continues going north.
Yeah.
And Interstate 295, which follows parallel, suddenly hooks off to the northeast or northwest. And I thought, well, all right, let me see what I can do. I went all the way up to exit 6 or even 7. The next day, I started at exit 8 and kept working my way up. As you got closer to Delaware, things were very reasonably priced, but a little too cramped and a little too off the beaten path.
Yeah.
As you got closer to New York City, you could see the hotel, but God help you if you could actually find it in the maze of highways. Plus, the facilities got bigger, but the price tag got prohibitively bigger.
Yeah.
So finally, I just settled on exit 7 of the New Jersey Turnpike, and I've been having the show in Bordentown ever since, except for the COVID year, 2020.
Wow.
Well, we moved it a little further, but it was just as successful. So
since I lived in Bordentown City, I should have just started at exit 7. I thought, well, let me see. And I thought, let me go down to, because at first a lot of people were saying if you're in Delaware, you don't have to worry about sales tax licenses and all that stuff. Not that I ever did worry about it. But I eventually found what I thought was a good spot. It was close to New York City, close to Philadelphia, pretty much in the middle of everything in New Jersey.
Yeah. Wow. Well, you know, I gotta say, I'm just super excited about this show. You know, I was talking to my friend earlier about this, and I said, listen, I'm so excited to do the show, but I'm a little nervous just because I haven't done a show since before the pandemic where I've really been in a room, and it's just going to be a little different for me. You know, I haven't really sat and like sold. So I have this like weird mixed feeling like, oh God, I'm going to be around people again. but I'm like super excited because like I love shows. The reason I started the show was because shows got canceled and I wanted to hang out and talk with artists. You know, that's why I started this. You know, I started this during the pandemic, and I'm like, I want to talk with artists, and I bring my friends on and let's BS and let's get other people on. And you know, it became what it became, but it was because I missed shows, and now I'm excited to be around people again. I'm excited to get to shows, to be flipping.
Come join the reality, and
yes.
You can enjoy your virtual reality, but you're going to enjoy reality much more.
No. I'm one of those people where it takes me a bit to get out of the house, but the second I'm out, I can stay out all day long. The second I come back in, don't make me go out again. So as soon as I leave, I'm going to be thrilled. I'm going to be like, this is exciting. I'm on my adventure again. And, you know, I love meeting people, you know, at these shows, not just the people behind the table, but the people who buy my work, just come and say hi at the table. I love interacting with them because art is just such a solitary business. I'm in my studio here alone doing my work, you know, and I don't get to interact with people until I do shows. So shows for me are just a way to get out and socialize and hang out and have a good time, you know. And I'm super excited because again, I've never done a specific pulp show. There's always been comic book shows. I've done a couple of like family type of shows, you know, where they were crafts and different things and just art shows, but I've never done this. And this is a topic I've been interested in. It's a topic I won't say I know everything about, but I know a bit about. And I just want to learn more. I want to see what's down there. I want to meet the people who are interested in this stuff. Hopefully, sell to some of those people. That's the important thing, as an artist. But it's just one of those things where it's like just this is going to be an exciting day for me.
Well, on Saturday you get to dive into the deep end.
Yeah, I am. I mean, the more and more, like I said, and I'm ready to look around. I'm ready to hurt my bank account a little bit. I'm going
Maybe
to.
it'll even out perfectly.
Yeah, hopefully. Well, I'll be like the other artist. I forgot his name now, but well,
Alan Kay.
Alan K. Maybe I'll get an Alan day. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's hope. Let's hope. Anyway, you guys, we should probably wrap up because we did do the hour and a half, which I thought we were going to do tonight. But hey, it's totally okay. It looks like Dylan left already. I want to say goodnight to him. You guys, I know I wasn't in the comments as much as I normally am, but everybody who commented, everybody who's going to be at the show, who watched, I want to thank you guys. Share it if you guys are haven't been to the show yet, and you want to get people to come to the show because you think it's going to be great, which I know it will. But I'm saying, you fans out there who are thinking, share this video out. Let other people know. All right, this video will be going up on YouTube in the next hour after it processes that it could be shared. So share this video to people. Share the Facebook one. The Twitch you can't do anything with. I'm sorry, guys. I keep forgetting to fix my Twitch one, but share the YouTube, share the Facebook. Let's get more people to know. I mean, you're already going to have a big crowd. You know that. You always do. But let's bring more people in. Let's get this show that so everyone can be could know about it. Who's not just Pulp fans or people interested in this type of stuff and never knew about it. So I will be sharing more of this video to people tomorrow, and I hope other people do as well. You guys, I want to thank you for coming on. I want to thank you for having me at the show. I will talk to Ray. If Ray can come and want to split the table, I'll be happy to share the table with him. If he doesn't and he can't, his loss. And maybe my walking loss, but we'll see. But I look forward to meeting you guys in person. Again, thank you for both the opportunity for the Zorro book. Thank you for the opportunity for the show. And I just know it's going to be a really fun day.
Well, thanks to you too for helping us expand our reach.
You're very welcome. All right, I'm going to drop you backstage and do my little closing, and I'll see you.
See you Saturday.
Yes. All right, guys. So that was my Get in Tune tonight. Rich and Audrey, two awesome people. Like I said, I look forward to meeting them. You guys, I really think you should be sharing this video. And by the way, share all my videos, but specifically this one because it's happening this weekend. This is just such, I'll put it this way. Just speaking of pulps in general, for you guys out there who are comic fans, I mentioned Doc Savage basically being the precursor to Superman, Batman, and some of the other characters. But everything, like the Spider, awesome character. I've been reading his comic when I can find them. When I first discovered it was the late 90s. These are some really awesome things out there. But these were the guys who basically brought the world of superheroes into the comic world that we know, and it was because their writers, their artists were reading these books, and, that's one of the ways I got into the pulps was because I was doing history researches on comic characters, and they would talk about these people, and I'd be like, well, who the heck is that? Well, I better research. And I started learning more and more and more. And that's why I'm loving these things. And I think you guys will too. So check it out. I will see you guys next week. I got another great guest coming on. I'd have to look at who it is right now. I'm blanking on the name, but you guys will like next week, I promise. And with that, you guys have a great rest of your day and night, week, whenever you're watching. And again, please share the video. I'll see you guys soon. Bye.